he left a note behind. If I get killed, it's Anthony Dupuy who did it. They found the note during the investigation. They held the note out of my hands. I didn't know nothing about it till the day of the trial. And they tried to make me plead on a lesser charge. I wouldn't do it because it happened in my house. I did wrong getting rid of the body. I'm sorry.
He left a note behind. If I get killed, it's Anthony Dupuy who did it. And now we are launching Anthony Dupui's parole hearing. We're going to unpack it with all the details at the end, but this one has the victims and the DA speaking. So with that, let's go.
So Mr. Dupuy is classified as a first felony offender, currently serving a life sentence. He has a sentencing date, November 19, 1974, for a second-degree murder. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am, that's correct. They just read into your sentencing, okay?
And he's serving a consecutive sentence to a previous conviction for manslaughter. So this life sentence began after he completed that sentence. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, so I would like for Mr. Dupuy to give us an account of what happened in both of those cases. First, we'd like to hear about the manslaughter case.
Okay. They want to talk, they need you to make an account of what happened with the manslaughter case. So Mr. McNeil.
Okay. Now?
Yes, and they can
Okay.
hear you. You can just.
Yeah. I'm not sure what took place on the manslaughter. They found me guilty of manslaughter, but I forgot exactly what happened. I'm not sure what happened, but whatever it is, I take responsibility for it. I'm sorry this happened. It's really not me. If I could undo it, I would.
And
I'm sorry.
okay, as Ms. Hutchinson said, the victim in that matter was Adrian McNeil, and that occurred in June of 1972, I believe.
So they're saying the victim was Mr. McNeil, and that was June of 1972, correct?
Yes, ma'am. It was a cold case.
Okay. And maybe the DA can help us out there at the appropriate time. So for the current conviction, with the current sentence that he's serving time for second-degree murder, we'd like to know about that. What happened there?
They need you to explain what happened on the second-degree murder, Mr. Norman.
Okay. My wife and I were separated. She left home and left our 18-month daughter next door with my brother because they used to babysit for me while I was working. She left, and I went out that night. I left my daughter next door with my brother. I went out and I started drinking, and I got drunk. I left the bar. I went to my house. My mom had left that day. She left some food on the stove for me. And I was heating it up, and somebody pulled up in my driveway. I didn't know who it was. And it was Larry Norman, a friend of mine. He was dating my wife then. They were going out. And he knocked on the door. He banged on the door. He mostly left his way in. We had a big argument. It got really heated. We started screaming at one another. I had a gun on the bar when I got home, next to the telephone. And I told him if he didn't leave, something was going to happen. He ran for the gun. He grabbed the gun. We fell to the floor. I was on his back. He had his hands on the gun. I had my hands on it. and it went off. He fell dead. I went in the bathroom, got a towel, tried to revive him, but he was gone. I left there and went and got a friend of mine to come help me to get rid of him. And he left with him. I don't know where he went with it because I didn't go. I cleaned the kitchen a little bit because I knew Mama was coming that morning. And that was about it. He left a note behind. If I get killed, it's Anthony Dupuy who did it. They found the note during the investigation. They held the note out of my hands. I didn't know nothing about it till the day of the trial. And they tried to make me plead on a lesser charge. I wouldn't do it because it happened in my house. I did wrong getting rid of the body. I'm sorry. I'm sorry for the families. I heard for them. I know what they're going through. I lost my grandson to violence. He just got out of the military. And his girlfriend killed him. So I know what you're going through. Believe me, I've been going through this my 50 years here. It hurts.
Yeah, let's get to that, Mr. Dupuy. Let's talk about it. So you've been incarcerated for 50 years. Is that accurate?
She said, is it accurate that you've been incarcerated for 50 years?
I think it's 50 or close to it.
And what's your current age?
How old are you?
I'm 79.
I do want to say, obviously, there's opposition in the record, and we'll hear from some of those who are opposed today. I want to just talk a little bit about how Mr. Dupuy has spent the last 50 years. I do notice that he does score out as a low risk on the risk assessment tool that the DOC prepares for us. He has only 9 write-ups in 50 years. The last one, I think, was over 30 years ago. Is that right?
Yes.
He doesn't have a lot of programs, educational programs, but I do notice he was given some credit for his carpenter skills, 410 credits of carpentry skills. And I believe that's probably why he doesn't have a lot of programs, because the institution utilized that skill set. Is that right?
Yes, ma'am.
So the only program I show is victim awareness. Are there others?
Yes, ma'am. He's currently enrolled in victim awareness as of January 24th. And he's also enrolled in anger management, and he completed 100-hour pre-release.
Okay, thank you. And those are all recent programs, right?
The 100-hour pre-release was completed in 2017, Chairman.
Okay, great. I do want to make note too of the various community service work projects that Mr. Dupuy has been involved in, which are included in the record. Ms. Hutchinson provided some great detail on that, and just a tremendous amount of community service work that he's done for the past, probably 30 years.
Yes, they're talking about your community service that you've done.
Okay, what about it?
That you did a lot in 30 years.
What I did?
Yeah, that you've done a lot in your
Yes,
service.
ma'am. I worked, when I came to prison, I worked 7 days a week, not because I had to, it's because I wanted to stay busy. I worked, I built homes, I built the museum, I built the hearse, the wood horse-drawn hearse, the rodeo wagon. I volunteered for everything. I helped raise money for the children.
Were you involved with the toy shop?
In the toy shop?
Yes, ma'am. I helped build the toy shop. We make 10,000 toys a year donated to them, and bicycles that's refurbished. Uh, I like my job. I'm the best at it.
Well, I will say I know your work, so I do think you're very good at it.
She said she remembers your work. You were very good at it.
Thank you. Thank
Does
you
he-
very much.
Mr. Dupuy, do you currently have a job now? What do you do now?
Do you currently have a job?
No, ma'am. When I had my heart surgery and then went through them kidney stones and all that, I lost 60 pounds. They let me gain my weight back. I'm picking it up. I'm 150 and I'm doing better, but I'm not working.
So you're focused on your health right now.
Yes, ma'am.
Good. All right, we'll hear from the opposition, shortly. Warden Ambo, is there anything you would like for us to know?
Everything that Anthony told you is correct, and, only thing I wanted to put in there, that he did try to take his GED, but because of his health, he missed 2 tests on, 2 different occasions. But I think that, his other work speaks for him, and I don't think he really don't need the GED. I don't think he's, functional to take it anyway right now because of his hearing.
Thank
But
you.
everything else is good.
Questions? No questions?
I've got one. It's not a question. It's I know that you're an older man now, but you couldn't remember the details of the first murder. And according to the record, the details was that Adrian McNeil was tied up and thrown off a bridge and he drowned. Do you remember that? And it was done with you had a friend named Borderline. The 2 of y'all were involved in it. Do you remember that one?
She's asking if you remember the details of Mr. McNeil's death. The record shows that he was tied up and he drowned, and you did with Mr. Bertalone.
Yes.
Yeah.
Do you remember it?
No, ma'am. I don't remember much of it, but I
Okay.
do the evidence they had was
Huh?
in my favor.
Oh,
They had 2 investigations going on, one in the Vols Parish where Mr. McNeil was hung, and one in St. Landry Parish where the body was found.
mhm.
My co-defendant testified against me. He said that I
Right.
stopped and I cut some rope and I tied Mr. McNeil up and I put a weight on him and I threw him over the bridge in Simpsport.
That's right.
Court, the hearing, the evidence he had, there was no cut up rope. There was one long rope and there was no weight tied to him. I was not there. I don't know the details of what happened after that.
All right. Okay, and then let's get to, I wanted to ask you about Mr. Normand. He's, now, do you remember the details of that? Because in the record, it says that he was shot in the head and then, well, of course, Mr. Borderline was involved in that one too. And he says that you made him help dispose of the body. Do you remember any of the details of that, or that's blank also?
She's asking if you remember the details of Mr. Norman. She said that the record shows he was shot in the head and that Mr. Bordelon assisted with that one.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
He came and got the body in his car and left with it.
All right, that's the end of my questions.
All right, thank you. Will, Mr. Dupuy, did you have a substance abuse problem?
She wants to know, did you have a substance abuse problem at that time, like
No, ma'am.
drinking or drugs?
No, ma'am. I never had anything like that, even to this day. I never used drugs in my system in my life. I drank a beer now and then. I was not a drunk. I have no hang-ups. I don't even drink Cokes to this day.
Okay, thank you, sir. We'll go ahead and listen now to the support. First, we'd like to hear from the Parole Project, Mr. Hunley.
Andrew Hunley with Louisiana Parole Project, appearing before the board today to let the board know that if Mr. Dupuy is granted parole, our organization stands ready to support him with his long-term reentry. That includes programming related to ensure that he has the tools he needs to be successful. Obviously, Mr. Dupuy will be a little different from most of our clients based on his age, his current cognitive state, and his health issues. He's going to need long-term health care. Obviously, you may be aware in the record of his family's ability to assist him with those health care needs. I'll let them speak for themselves. But based on the amount of time that he served and his disciplinary record while incarcerated, our organization feels very comfortable with helping him during his transition, if that's what the board grants, and to working with his family to ensure that his long-term needs are met. And I stand ready to answer any questions you may have about his reentry. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have Dawn Jordan, who's here. Step up to the podium. We'd like to hear from you, please.
Good morning. So my name is Dawn Dupuy Jordan. I'm the daughter of Buford Anthony Dupuy. On behalf of our family, we would like to first thank God for this day. It's one we've anticipated for almost 50 years. Today I stand before you not only as a daughter of the man whose fate lies in your hands, but also as a testament to the power of redemption and change. My father, Buford Anthony Dupuy, is more than a prisoner. He's a man that is first reflection and genuine commitment to rehabilitation during time in prison. My father deeply understands the severity of his actions and the impact they had on the victim's family, and our family. He carries the weight of mistakes every day, and his desire for redemption is sincere and profound. As his daughter, I have witnessed his remorse and regret and the unwavering commitment to make amends for the wrongs he has committed. My father was incarcerated at age 28. I was less than 2 years old. He is now 79. He's not the same person he was 2 years ago. Throughout his incarceration, my father has actively participated in self-improvement and rehabilitation. He has been a mentor to other inmates by providing guidance and teaching carpentry skills. He has also done many building projects that benefited the prison. These changes are also evident in the fact that he hasn't had any write-ups in over 31 years and very few during his incarceration. He has shown unwavering determination to transform his life, and I know he will contribute positively to society. My vision is for my father to be granted parole, come live with me, where he will have a permanent, stable residence. I am a nurse. My daughters are nurses. I can get the help that he needs, and I will take care of my father. My family is well established in our community. I built my home 25 years ago in Grant Parish, Louisiana. We are working with the Louisiana Parole Project to guarantee the smooth transition into society and to provide continued support of granted parole. I will take full responsibility of paying all probation and parole fees. I've spoken to the probation and parole officers. I know exactly what they expect, and I'm willing to go above and beyond to take care of those fees. I have spoken to the sheriff of Grant Parish. He's a personal friend of mine, Sheriff Stephen McCain. He wrote a letter to the board. He has given my father the opportunity to become a mentor at the Grant Parish Detention Center. Will be a mentor at his facility. I think my dad wants to give back to the community, tell the story, and help change the lives of other ones. Granting my father parole is not merely an act of mercy, it's acknowledgement of his humanity, potential for change, and his capacity to contribute positively to society. I truly believe every individual deserves a second chance. I ask you to consider not only the seriousness of his past actions, but also the depth of remorse, the sincerity of his transformation, the potential for him to lead a meaningful life, a law-abiding life. I respectfully request the parole board members to please give my father parole. I want to personally thank you all for your time, your effort, and your dedication.
Thank you so much. We appreciate your remarks. And we have, Chelsea Alwell, who's,
Yes, ma'am. This is Chelsea Allwell. I'm the grandfather of Anthony Dupuy. I'm here today to support his release. I'm 34 years old. I've been visiting my grandfather since I was born. I have great memories with my grandfather growing up at the Angola rodeos. He has made a very positive impact in my life and also my family's life. We have a great relationship. He's always supported me and my family. We would all be grateful to have him home to spend the remainder of his life with him. I do feel that my grandfather has acknowledged his mistakes and he has always been remorseful. He has expressed great sadness and guilt over the years. I have personally witnessed his growth and rehabilitation. I believe he has the ability to successfully reintegrate into society and lead a law-abiding life if he is granted parole. My family are being proactive, and I are being proactive at his as his support team to assist in any possible way to make the transition as smooth as possible. I will support him if he is released from prison by being there by his side with any assistance, needs, or desires. Spend time with him, provide emotional support, assist with transportation, and any medical needs. I know his medical condition, has declined. He's had heart problems, kidney stones. I am a registered nurse and I will be there to assist with anything that I can. He has been given the opportunity by our sheriff here, Stephen Kane, to become a mentor at the Grant Parish Detention Center. And he has expressed dedication and determination to give back to the community in any way possible that he can. I do understand that y'all as the parole board, y'all have difficult responsibilities in evaluating each case thoroughly and making decisions that impacts the lives of others. Please consider my words as I stand before you today. I plead for my grandfather's release. I ask that you see beyond the mistakes of the past and recognize the person he has become today, a person committed to growth, redemption, and contributing positively to society. Please consider the progress he has made, the support that he has in place today. I ask for your compassion and mercy in granting him this chance for redemption. I want to end this by saying thank you for this opportunity and your consideration.
well, thank you. And thank you. You're obviously at work. So thank you for taking the time to speak with us this week. We appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank y'all.
Okay, so at this time, we'll ask for Mr. Dupuy's remarks, and then we'll ask Ms. Hutchinson for her presentation. Mr. Dupuy?
They're asking for your closing remarks.
Okay. I want to say thank you for this hearing and for giving me a chance at this. I know this is not an easy decision to make when it comes to declining whether or not you're going to be let a free man that's been in prison for 50 years back into society. I'd like you to take into consideration that I'm not the same person. I regret the crime I committed. I'm very remorseful for that I've done. I spent 50 years of my life in prison. I wish I would have taken the time to think before acting. I regret the hurt and pain that I caused you, that I caused the victims and my families and their family. I'd like the board to know that I've learned from my mistakes in the past. I accept full responsibility for something at a young age. I made a bad decision that cost me, cost you, and cost us your life. I made a bad choice. I regret the hurt I did everyone. I apologize for that. I'd like to take into consideration, even though you don't personally know me, I'd like you to look at my prison record, my history here in prison. I have few write-ups, no write-ups in 31 years. Look at how I've helped others and their struggle and given them knowledge, teaching them trades, getting to know them personally, and being a mentor to many. We try to help each other in here. That's what life's about, and doing the best you can with what you've got, with what you've given. I'd like you to know that I'm not the same person that I was 50 years ago. I was 28 years old when I committed these crimes. I have positive changes. I'd like you to know I have health problems. I have heart surgery and severe internal issues. I'd like the board to take into consideration plans I live with my family that are very supportive of me. I won't be back here. I have a plan to continue helping others and to participate in prison if I'm released. I'd like to thank you for the opportunity you have given me today. I am sorry for everything. I wish I could change it. It hurts to this day. Every day. It hurts. And I'm sorry. I can't change it. Please find a way to forgive me in your heart.
Thank you, Mr. Dupuy. Ms. Hutchinson?
Thank you for speaking with us today and your time and patience with Mr. Dupuy. We know hearings with our older men often have different challenges. So thank you, board, for that. I want to make it clear that Tony isn't here today to argue any facts of the crime or to discredit the hurt and the pain the crimes have caused. I think it's evident that Mr. Dupuy wholeheartedly regrets his actions and is truly remorseful for the pain he caused. And at 78 years old, I asked, or 79,
79.
I asked the board that if Mr. Dupuy's details were foggy and at times all over the place, to blame it on his mind, not his heart. He's had, several bouts with medical issues, and he's 79 years old. But just as Mr. Dupuy has just become overcome with emotions today, this has been his sentiment the entire time we've worked together. I believe that it's clear from Mr. Dupuy's that he recognized his life had spiraled too far and that he did not want his time in prison to be reflective of his past and the person he was that caused him to come to prison. We know this because Mr. Dupuy comes before the board with an impeccable disciplinary record, with only 9 write-ups in almost 50 years and the last one over 30 years ago. We know this from his extensive volunteer work, because as long as Mr. Dupuy was healthy and able to work, he did, working his regular prison job and volunteering 7 days a week for various volunteer jobs. And while my brief discusses many of his various contributions to Louisiana State Penitentiary, neither Mr. Dupuy nor the many people here who he has worked with have been able to keep track and account for all the various projects that he's done. And I won't go through those because Ms. Renata did read them into the record already. But I wanted to recognize that with each job was an extreme level of trust. He's been trusted for most of these volunteer assignments to live at various work sites on the compound with low supervision or venture out past the prison walls to accomplish these goals. Mr. Dupuy established a record of trust and accountability, showing that he would not pose a threat to public safety if he was to return to society. He has a low Tiger score, which indicates he's a low risk of recidivism. One of the main factors attributing to this is Mr. Dupuy's age. At 79 years old, he's past the age where continued criminal activity is statistically likely. It's at almost a 0. Furthermore, Mr. Dupuy has substantial health concerns, having already had quadruple bypass surgery in 2017, multiple bouts with kidney stones, and ongoing treatment for proctitis. And of course, his hearing loss and other ailments that come with advanced age. As my brief discussed, continuing to imprison Mr. Dupuy, an elderly, low-risk aging offender with considerable medical issues, who is no longer a threat to society, will cost the state over $90,000 annually. Mr. Dupuy embodies what parole is about: remorse, rehabilitation, maturity, and accountability, and a release that poses no threat to the community. Even when his original sentence of life with the possibility of parole after 20 years was taken away through legislation, he stayed the course, being a better man, continuing to help and serve. And when the parole was reinstated through legislation, and now he needed to complete 40 years before his parole eligibility, he again just worked, volunteered, and continued to help others until his age and health slowed him down. Mr. Dupuy's reentry plan is solid. He has the full support of the Louisiana Parole Project. He has a home with his daughter and granddaughter, who are both nurses, available to help maintain his healthcare needs. He won't be returning to Vols Parish, but rather going to the community where his daughter has close ties, where the sheriff has welcomed him to come speak at his detention center, where he believes Mr. Tony's story would provide a positive impact to deter those headed down the wrong path. In closing, and in consideration of Mr. Dupuy's remorse, rehabilitation, age, his continued health issues, his extensive volunteer work and service to others, his impeccable institutional record, and looking at the 79-year-old man he is today after almost 50 years of incarceration, we respectfully ask you give Mr. Dupuy a second chance with any restrictions this board feels necessary. Thank you.
You ma'am, we appreciate that presentation. So at this time, we'll hear from the opposition. First, we have with us here, Mr. Norman.
Hi, my name is Michelle Norman Gaia. I'm going to be
Hear from
speaking.
Timothy first. I'm sorry. We're going to hear from Timothy first. He's here with us in Baton Rouge. Go ahead, sir.
I'm going to speak today.
Speak up a little bit.
My father was taken from me when I was 8 years old, and have lived for the last 50 years. And I've nearly had the opportunity to spend childhood growing up without my dad. And now as an adult, I can see my father again because of the cold blooded killer that killed my father. My dad, there was no accident. And I would rather you deny this chance of this guy ever getting out of prison with me.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much for being here today. And now let's see, we have, do we have Amy Dupuy?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Good morning. My name is Amy Norman Dupuy. No relation to the Dupuy family here. I am the niece of Larry Norman. My father, Emil Norman Jr., was the oldest Norman sibling. He passed away in 2003, and I'm here today speaking on his behalf. I was only 6 years old when my Uncle Larry was murdered. I don't remember him very well, and I don't remember a great deal around the time he was murdered, but I do remember the devastating effect it had on my father, his siblings, my grandmother, and the entire Norman family. As the eldest of 7 children, my father had to identify my uncle's body when it was found. My grandmother couldn't do it, and my grandfather had passed away many years before. Identifying his brother's body disturbed my father for a very long time. I remember overhearing my parents talking about my uncle being shot execution style. At 6 years old, I didn't really know what that meant or why there was a hole in his cheek. I later learned what it meant and that the hole in his cheek was the exit wound. from being shot in the back of the head. My daddy and his siblings were always very close, even through adulthood, and the murder of their brother changed their family and their lives forever. Larry was a musician like my father, and I remember him and my grandmother listening to Larry's music and crying. My uncle was murdered at the age of 31 over a woman, shot in the back of the head, and then dumped like trash. It was not an impulsive crime of passion, as Anthony Dupuy had also murdered my best friend's father, Adrian McNeil, for a different reason prior to killing my uncle. On behalf of my father and the Norman family, I respectfully ask that you deny parole. Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing those remarks with us. Ms. Gagnard?
Morning, my name is Michelle Norman Gaia. I am the daughter of Kent Norman. I will be speaking on his behalf today. He is the last living surviving sibling of Mr. Larry Norman. We are requesting that Mr. Dupuy remain in the Louisiana State Penitentiary for the duration of his sentence, life in prison, for the brutal death of Larry. Myself, the extended family members, friends, and the community would appreciate this decision to allow them to feel safe and secure. Larry was the sixth and my father was the seventh of the children in their family. Because of their age and gender, they were very close. Larry did not deserve the actions Mr. Dupuy took against him. He had a lot of good years left to live and memories to make with his family. The family missed him terribly. Larry was an outstanding musician, playing instruments and singing in his own band, Larry and the Diamonds. He enjoyed entertaining large crowds that he attracted with both English and French songs. Quite often when Larry played, Mr. Dupuy would come and stand in front of the bandstand, staring him down, trying to intimidate him. Mr. Dupuy believed that Larry was dating his estranged wife. On July 2nd, 1974, Mr. Dupuy came to Larry's house and a fight between them occurred. Mr. Dupuy kidnapped him and brought him back to his home, where he leaned him over a bathtub and shot him in the back of the head with a 9mm pistol. Mr. Dupuy's friend, Mr. Jesse Bordelon, assisted in loading him up and was to take his body to dump in the river. Mr. Bordelon instead dumped Larry's body down a local back road known for dumping trash, where he was found 2 days later by a young boy. The day he was found was July 4th, and to this day, my father is unable to celebrate this holiday as other people can because of this extreme tragedy. A note, as it has been said, was found at Larry's house that if I am killed, Anthony Dupuy is the one who did it. Again, we are asking on behalf of Larry's family that Mr. Dupuy remain incarcerated and pay for the trauma he has caused so many people. Thank you for hearing us.
And thank you for speaking with us this morning. And now we have the district attorney, Mr. Riddle.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chairman, and to members of the board. I appreciate the opportunity. Hopefully, y'all received the email enclosing the letter that was written by Eddie Noe, who was the prosecutor at the time for both cases, the previous one and the one that we're here for today. Without Jesse Bordelon, neither of these cases would have been solved. Jesse Bordelon was a key witness in the case. And I did send a copy of the letter that Eddie Noe had written, a 2-page letter, November 22nd, 1977, where he stated the facts of both cases and what actually happened. Now, I know that Mr. Dupuy has said that he has no memory of the first homicide, and I believe his facts of the second one are contrary to the testimony at the trial. And I want to read just a portion of the testimony. When Sheriff Didier, who was the sheriff at the time, was interrogating Mr. Dupuy, he asked him why did he want to give a statement. And the response, and this is on page 3 of the original transcript, he said he just wanted to get it off his consciousness. And on the next page asked about, why, and he said, well, he had been reading the Bible and he had read approximately 50 pages and he decided he wanted to tell his story. Then when describing the incident, he said he took the body, meaning Mr. Dupuy, took the body, put it in the back seat of his Volkswagen, drove to Bayou de Lac, which is a bayou in a Balls Parish, on Luke Morton Road, and threw the body over the side of the bridge. Yes, he had Jesse with him, but he did it. All right, did he tell you, the question by Mr. No, did he tell you what he did after he had thrown the body over the bridge of Bayou de Lac? Yes, this is the sheriff. I asked him, I said, what did you do with the towel? Because after he had shot Mr. Excuse me, after he shot Mr. Norman, he wrapped the towel around his head. And the sheriff asked him, what did you do with the towel? He said, I threw the towel in with the body. That's a direct quote from the sheriff interrogating Mr. Dupuy as soon as they found the body. Then he said he got in the back of the car. This is the sheriff continuing. And he came back up the Luke Morton Road until he came to the Bunkie Hessman intersection. Then he made a right turn and he went again to Bayou de Lac and he threw the pistol in Bayou de Lac. There's several interesting things about this. Number one, in both homicides, the body was concealed so that it would not be found. Secondly, these two people who were victims of the homicide were social friends with Mr. Dupuy. Yet he felt it necessary for him to hide both bodies, conceal it from the family, and cause this tragic situation. There's a big difference between forgiveness in a biblical sense and setting somebody free. The families can forgive, but it doesn't mean they want him free. We're asking that he continue to remain in custody. His testimony today is unbelievable that he doesn't remember the first one, and the second one is contrary to the testimony at the trial. I ask, as the district attorney of Balls Parish now, that he be denied parole.
Yes, sir. Thank you. We appreciate your participation today.
Thank you.
Is the panel prepared to vote? Mr. Tillis?
Yes. Oh, we're
Yeah,
on that.
we're voting now.
I vote to deny.
Mrs. Stapleton?
I vote to deny also based upon the violent nature of the crime.
And Mr. Freeman?
I vote to deny because he was involved in two different killings, law enforcement and victim opposition, and a very selective member.
Mr. Byron?
Vote for the same reasons stated by Mr. Pete Freeman.
All right,
To deny.
Mr. Dupree, you've received 4 votes to deny your petition for parole today. As you know, it requires a unanimous vote. So the outcome of today's proceeding is that your parole is denied. Ms. Hutchinson, will you explain that to me?
Yes, ma'am.
Warden, that concludes our business at
Voted to
10,
deny.
adjourned 11:43.
Thank you, Madam Chairman and the parole board.
Thank you, Mr. Riddle.
They denied me.
Yes.
What's most amazing to me about this case is how all these years later, it's like all these years later, he still cannot admit culpability. He still cannot simply say the few words that he has to say, which is, he did these acts because. Just say the truth. It's like the only thing he could have done to get revoked, to not get paroled, and not only that, but to get unanimously denied, was to handle the hearing the way he handled it. I mean, even if you were rooting for him, let me ask you, if you were rooting for him, saying, man, he's been locked up so long, let him out. How can you, would you not lose like that after that performance? And it baffles me because he's sitting there with all the support of the Louisiana Parole Project, with the attorneys and no one sat down with him and said, this is what they're going to do. They're going to ask you about the crime. what are you going to say? Like, did they not have that talk with him? Or did they have the talk and he said, no, this is how I'm doing it. It's my way or the highway. And they're just like, okay. Like, I really want to get under the hood, behind the doors, and listen to how this could have happened from his perspective. Now, would they have granted had he taken culpability? It was interesting, like Mr. Pete Freeman had the little bit of a mic drop there where he brings up, he's denied, he's involved in 2 killings, and he has a very selective memory, which is, how do you start off with, I have no memory of the first person I killed. I have none at all. It's not existent. And it really does it's like, when I first listened to this, I listened to it multiple times. Richard sent it over. He's like, man, you should cover this one soon. Now that I'm doing a lot of hearings, I can't just listen to, right? I got Louisiana, we have Iowa, we have Connecticut, we have Utah, we have Illinois. So it's hard to stay. So, Richard does is he looks after the big cases and brings it up. And then when I was listening to this, I was like, wait a minute, what? He killed 2 people in his life? That always, and it just made it hard to feel bad for me. Even at the end there, he's like, was I denied? Like, it almost feels heart-wrenching to hear an old man say that, but at the same time, it's like, look, how do you get to the point where you have that kind of parole hearing? I don't know why I'm harping on that part. There's a lot to harp on. Of course, they bring up, his attorney brings up the cost of $90,000 a year for a prison to hold someone at that age. And many of you know this already because we've spoken about it so much on this channel, but maybe if you're somewhat new, the Louisiana Parole Project, right? It sounds like this great organization. They help people who for parole, but all it is another money-making scheme, money-making machine. It's a non-for-profit, right? But what happened was, now remember, prison like Angola is publicly traded, not under the name Angola, but there's like a conglomerate of, it's a publicly traded company that owns a bunch of prisons. They're privately run. They were printing money, right? Having all these young, healthy people locked up, working, making, basically it's like somewhat, some might argue slave labor, you're locked up, but people are working for a few pennies an hour doing this, doing that, and everything in the prison. And the publicly traded companies are making bank on it. But over time, these young, fit prisoners, they become old, costly prisoners. So they lobbied the state of Louisiana to say, we need to find a way to offset this cost. So why don't we change laws and put in laws like Act 122, which allows someone who had a life sentence to now be eligible for parole, as long as they're over the age of 45 and they serve 20 years of their sentence. And both sides of the aisle. So that's a great idea. Why? Because Louisiana has a reputation for having the worst, per capita prison ratio, and they want that number to go away. So this is shifting inmates from, one area to another, and they allocated like hundreds of millions of dollars over the next decade to cover the cost of these inmates who will now not become inmates. And that goes to programs like the Louisiana Parole Project. I hope I didn't lose you here, but in a nutshell, it's just shifting money from one bucket to another. It's still taxpayer money, but they get to put it in different, it's different columns. The government gets to say, wow, we're doing great. The prison, well, now they're much more profitable. That's great. And people like Louisiana Parole Project it's a good business to be in. And so that's why they're out here, lobbying on behalf of their clients. Remember, they're called clients, to get them released, because every client they released is money that they need to, it's a business. Although it's called a non-for-profit, it's a business. Now, gosh, I digress, haven't I? It still blows my mind that he could have such a terrible parole hearing, but maybe they're not. Maybe they're not preparing their clients the way they should, or maybe their client just is too much in denial. But you hear from the victims, you hear from the DA. How great was it to see the DA actually show up? That is so nice to see. But anyways, let's go over through some of the information that Richard found. And I'm going to just share with you. He found all these old newspapers. And I said, Richard, it's all these old newspapers. It's hard for me to digest it. My brain's a little fried. I've been doing all these. So, I'll give you just a taste of what it is. Marksville man sentenced to 20 years and 2 slayings. If you remember, they initially sentenced to 20, right? And then they changed it. And Louisiana did that type of stuff too. I don't really understand it. Here's another one, right? Newspaper. But what I'll do is I'll just go over the actual writings with you that Richard put for me in a document so I can actually read it to you, because going through it in the newspaper articles is always a little bit more difficult. So this is a news clipping, address O'Neill, column J. These are highlights from OCR. So according to Bordelin, deputy told him, be prepared in case I need you. Later, after Bordelin had gone to his room, Dupuy said, hurry and get dressed. I need you. 2 then drove to Anthony Dupuy's trailer, and when they entered, Dupuy led him into the master bathroom, where he saw a man on his knees with his head down in the bathtub and his hands tied in front of him. And the tub was about half full of water with blood in it. Bordelin then stated that Dupuy obtained a sheet and wrapped it around the body. According to the witness, Dupuy requested him to take the body to New Orleans and dump it in the lake. I'm not going to try to pronounce that. However, he refused due to having no gasoline, bad tires on his car, and also they didn't want to get caught with the body. Anthony then gave him $20 and told him to go ahead to New Orleans and lay low for a few days. Instead, Bordelini testified that he drove towards Bunkie, and when he got to the Bayou du Lac Bridge, he dumped the body where it was found the morning of July 4th. I asked Dupuy why he had done this, and he said, because Larry was going out with my wife. Mrs. Cynthia Dupuy's wife of the defendant were questioned regarding her association with the deceased and asked her plans to leave her husband to go with Norman. According to Dupuy, I didn't know what I was talking about, as I was in shock, and to tell the truth about what happened the night Larry Norman died. According to Dupuy, he was to have gone to a supper, and after not being able to locate the place, had gone back to Marksville and went by Jesse Bordelin, and Jesse borrowed $20 from him. Again, I'm sorry for the butchered reading. It's just, remember, this is like clips from a newspaper. He then went to his trailer. Later, Larry Norman came to Dupuy and appeared to be upset. When he asked what he wanted, Dupuy said Norman told him he wanted to see his bedroom and king-size bed. After some argument, so now this is his explanation of what happened that led up to the killing. He told him he wanted to see his bedroom king-size bed. After some argument, Dupuy stated that he reached into a drawer and pulled out a German Luger pistol. That's the classic, for those of you who know, the classic German Luger pistol that we all see in the movies. And by the way, as a World War II historian buff, the German Luger pistol was not the most produced German sidearm. There was another one, was it a P something? But it wasn't the Luger, but just the Luger stands out the most, and Hollywood picked that up, and that's why we all think of that. And told Norman to get out of his house. During the course of the argument, according to the witness, Norman told him that he was having an affair with Cynthia, and then Larry jumped me and the gun went off. Here's the story. He jumped me and the gun went off. All these criminals say, the gun always goes off. I had no intentions of killing Larry. Yeah, except he actually wrote a letter. If I'm dead, he did it. Isn't that incredible? Larry Norman, it was an accident. If I had wanted to kill him, I could have several times. After the gun went off and he fell to the floor, I bent over him, but there was no movement. Dupuy then stated, and he went to a back room where he had some camping equipment and got some rope and tied Larry up and took him into the bathroom. I wonder why he tied him up. Was he afraid he was still alive? I then went to Jesse Borderland and asked him to come help me. We drove back to my place. Jesse drove up. It's interesting, though, how his story is somewhat similar, right? All these years later. Evidence adduced at trial indicated that the defendant and Jesse met Adrian McNeil outside Alexandria, Louisiana, and drove him towards Louisiana and Hamburg in town. The defendant left the main road and entered the Ring Levy Road, ostensibly to allow Borderland to relieve himself. At this point, McNeil was tied and placed in the trunk of the automobile, which then proceeded towards a new bridge in Simsport near the top bridge of the defendant. Borderland threw McNeil over the bridge, which forms the boundary between So after Dupuy's arrest, he was interrogated at the sheriff's office, beginning with the sheriff asking him whether he knew his rights. Dupuy responded that he did, and then admitted to killing Norman in a tussle. At trial, Dupuy's defense was based upon Norman being accidentally shot during a tussle. Dupuy admitted killing Norman. He and Jesse Borderland throw Norman's body into the bayou. Dupuy drove to another location and threw the gun into the bayou. Norman had been hogtied and shot in the back of the head. Norman left him saying, "If I get killed, it's Anthony Dupuy." So I wonder, he probably had hogtied him before he shot him in the back of the head. And his story, which is terrifying to think, and his story is so dumb. Even to this day, he uses it. We were fighting, and we both held the gun, and I shot him in the back. And it's like, no, he was shot in the back of the head. He was hogtied. I'm not sure why, but for this parole hearing, is it because of the new laws, or is it only because of this specific case they needed 5 board members? Only 5 board members is a commutation hearing. We have seen it a few other times, though, so maybe because of the crime, they needed 5 board members for this. You can't make it up. You just can't. But, it's interesting. I had my grandfather come on the other day, and I saw so many great comments about it. So many of you loved it. And my grandfather had told me a story about how he went into prison in Connecticut to do like a sale. He was a salesman. And he gives a story about a man who he worked with, an inmate who who said he was in there for killing his wife. He says that, well, his wife was cheating on him and he lost it and killed her. And I always said, look, it might be possible that that's just what happened, but we've seen so many parole hearings where that's the kind of story that is weaved, and then you go under the hood and you find out what actually happened, and you find out, well, they were separated for 2 years. She had a restraining order on him, and yeah, they were technically married, but he was stalking her, came in, and and that's the truth behind the story. So I told him that, but maybe I can give him a call and he'll share that story with us again. Do you have a minute to share a story with the Mandu community?
The which community?
The Mandu community, YouTube.
Oh, the Mandu community. Oh, sure.
So
can you call me back in 5 minutes though?
Oh, absolutely. I'm going to call you back in 5. Okay.
Roger that.
Roger that. I'll call him back in 5. Okay, and we're live. So I got you back on the phone. I just did a hearing that was quite interesting. It's about a man who killed the lover of his ex-wife, but he wasn't divorced yet. He was just separated. And, he kind of like spun a story about how it happened. And I thought, this would be a good time to bring up how you brought up a story, how you ended up in a prison doing sales, and that man surprised you by what he claims he had done to get locked up. So why don't you share the story with the audience?
Sure. I was working for an office machine company at the time, and I sold the machine to the local prison for their industry. They had 5 separate industries, and they wanted to know if they were making any money on it. And this machine would give them that information, their costs, their sales, and their profit. And it was quite an intricate operation. And my job was to teach the operator to run the machine. Well, after going through 3 or 4 locks, and it felt very, very confining going through those locks, I met the gentleman, and he was wearing prison clothes, pressed to perfection. I thought he was in the service. His shoes were shine, you could see your face in it. And he was a nice gentleman, and I started teaching him the operation of the machine. He picked it up quite quickly and did a beautiful job. And I had to come back 3 or 4 times. Well, the last time I went back, I kind of said to him, "Excuse me, but why are you here?" And he said, "Because I killed my wife." I said, "Oh my, killed your wife?" He says, "Yeah, I came home one day and she was in bed with some other guy. So I took my gun out and shot her. And I'm spending the rest of my life in jail because I shot her fooling around with another guy." And that is the way it went. But he was a neat guy, very content and very well adapted to operating the machine.
Thank you for sharing the story. And it's
My pleasure.
From my experience watching these parole hearings, I've without my experience, I would say, well, I can understand. I might do the same thing. but what so often seems to be the case is that it's never exactly what they say. There's often more to it. Like we've seen the exact same story, but then you find out from more information that, well, they were separated 2 years. She had a restraining order against him, things like that. But so
he seemed like a real nice guy.
And they can. That's the interesting thing.
Yeah,
they
a
can.
real nice guy, and he was a gentleman to me at all times.
Yeah, I believe it.
He was the student, and I was the teacher.
And that's just one.
That's the way our relationship is.
And that's just one of your jobs, right? What were you? You're a 2nd generation butcher or 3rd generation butcher? I don't.
Second.
I know you grew up in the butcher shop, but when butchering made money, right?
Oh yeah, that was back in the day when it was black market days during the war.
During World War II.
You'd sell out in the middle of the afternoon, and it was all through, everything sold.
This is
tough times.
This is World War II you're referring to?
Yes, of course.
Of course. Right.
There were rationing stamps. You could only get so much meat, because it was rationed.
It's
as well as other commodities, such as shoes.
You know that
gasoline.
Everyone loved your surprise appearance on the last show. I sent you a bunch of the comments. I don't know if you had a chance to read them.
I saw them. I was very impressed. I thanked them very much. It was lovely.
Oh, fantastic! I know it made my.
And I hope to return again with some other stories.
Well, I will let you go on that note, and we will bring you back on a more regular basis. I'll talk to your agent.
Sounds wonderful.
Maybe you can sing us a song too next time.
Okay, you got it.
All right, love you.
Love you too.
Bye. Oh, he's busy. That's why he has to go. He's got a busy schedule. And I'm not kidding when I say this. He's got a packed schedule. Whenever I call him, he's doing something. He's driving somewhere. He does the choir. He does the gym 3 times a week. He has his full, every evening he's playing some type of game, like with other people. He's the different games that he plays. And I don't know. He's just got a love for life, and something that I would really, really, really wish I could one day fully encompass. I don't know, but we'll bring him back more often. All those comments really brought warmth to my heart and to his and others in my family. So if you guys love him, we'll keep bringing him back. And with that, I'll let you go.